Hi, you're right. Welcome to this week on the point of poetry. So far I've been thinking about the different things that poetry can explore and engage with in society and beyond. Whether it's engaging in social change and the desire for social change, exploring universal human experiences, capturing moments in history of significance, and also helping us to understand the lives and experiences of people from other and different cultures and traditions. So first of all, a bit of reflection on some of the things you've been focusing on recently. Pause the video here, have a go at answering those questions. Good luck. All right, well done. Let's go for the answers. So, what might the caged bird symbolise in Angelou's poem? Could be imprisonment, confinement, lack of freedom, any sense of entrapment, really. What does futile mean? Means incapable of producing any useful result or pointless. Can you be patriotic and still be anti-war? Explain why. You can, because having pride or devotion to one's country doesn't always mean violence and war to protect that devotion. There are other ways and means. Number 4, what historical movement was Angelou acknowledging in her poem The Caged Bird? The US Civil Rights Movement in the bid for equality. Okay, so big question for today. How does Blake, brilliant poet of the 18th, early 19th century, how does William Blake use poetry to argue for social change and expose the horrific treatment of the poor children? So first of all, thinking of change in a broader sense, can you copy down a definition in your book? Have a go at the task, please. Copy down the word and what the word means. Okay. Reform is the word. Okay, so we copy down the noun, the linked words, and have a go at completing the task. Okay, it means to make changes to something, especially in institutional practice, in order to improve it. So it's about making changes in society. Big changes generally is how it's thought. Okay, pause the video now and have a go at that. All right, so building a bit of contextual knowledge. William Blake is a very famous poet who lived from 1757 to 1827. Worked to bring about a change both in the social order and in the minds of men. In his lifetime, he actually was largely neglected of his works, but actually now, in the modern era, he's considered one of the leading lights of English poetry, and his work has only grown in popularity. He himself believed, of course, that his writings were very important and that it should be understood by a majority of his peers. He lived in a very bustling and busy London at a time when huge changes were happening, and they profoundly influenced his writing. He was a strong believer in social reform. He saw some terrible things happening in London. In addition to being considered one of the most visionary of English poets, also he was a great artist, and his visual artwork is highly regarded around the world. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to click on that link there and watch the kind of 3.5 minute YouTube clip all about the specific thing we're looking at today, which are chimney sweeps. Okay, so after that, there are 7 questions to answer with the video in mind. Okay, off you go, watch the video, come back to these questions afterwards. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that illuminating insight into the world of the chimney sweep. Pretty brutal, hey? Okay, pause the video here and have a go at answering those questions. If you need to rewatch the video, please do. Okay, off you go. Okay, so let us go through the answers. So, when did the demand for chimney sweepers increase? In the 18th century, so the 1700s, around when Blake was writing and alive. Why did it increase? Because of the Industrial Revolution caused rapid urbanization, i.e. the growth of cities, and therefore more chimneys in a shorter space, in a smaller space itself, okay? And the rise of the use of coal, etc., etc. Why were the children the preferred choice? Because they were small enough to fit up the chimneys. How did the masters treat the climbing boys, which is the name for the boys who climbed up the chimneys? Mostly poorly, with the cruellest lighting fires to terrify and hurry the boys up if they deemed them to be working too slowly. What were the dangers and effects of being a climbing boy and climbing the chimney? From cuts and scrapes, to suffocation, to disability, stunted growth, irreversible lung damage, or premature death. It was a horrifically dangerous and brutal job. How much are the boys paid? Nothing. They were given food and somewhere to sleep. But you may have noticed also they were deliberately malnourished to keep them small and stunt their growth so they could work for longer. Huge exploitation there, really. How young were the children when they started becoming chimney sweeps? As young as 4. Okay, here's a William Blake poem from his Songs of Innocence. Okay, I'm going to read it to you. What I'd like you to do after that is copy and complete those 2 sentences on the right to answer those 2 questions. Okay. Today is about building up our knowledge, beginning to think about how Blake presents how the chimney sweepers were treated. Okay, tomorrow we'll look at language in a bit more detail. So, The Chimney Sweeper, When My Mother Died I Was Very Young, by William Blake. When my mother died I was very young, and my father sold me, while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in soot I sleep. There's little Tom Dacre, who cried when his head, that curled like a lamb's back, was shaved. So I said, Hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head's bare, you know that the soot cannot spoil your white hair. And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was a-sleeping, he had such a sight, that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. And by came an angel who had a bright key, then he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing, they run, and wash in a river and shine in the sun. And naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise up upon clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark, and got with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm, so if all do their duty, they need not fear harm. Okay, see a big contrast here between these three stanzas and the other three stanzas. Our big focus point for today is on these ones, okay? Okay, so if you can now think about, what is this poem about? And also, what do you think Blake the poet wants to reform in society? Okay, for thinking about this here, what do you think he thinks ought to change in society, okay? Pause the video here and have a go at copy completing those sentence stems. Okay, well done. Okay, so next thing to think about developer understanding is this hinge question. Which statement do you think best sums up the message of the poem? A, to expose the realities of child labour and how the poor children are vulnerable to exploitation. B, to explore how chimney sweepers have a good and easy life. C, to explore how all children would be okay even if they had tough jobs. Okay, if you could write down A, B, or C, and the one that you've chosen, okay? Okay, of course the answer is A. You feel like what Blake is trying to achieve here is to show how horrific it was to do such a terrible job, even as a very small child, and how they were vulnerable to exploitation by adults, particularly in that time era, who are looking to profit from them, okay? Alright, let's develop that notion a little bit further. So, the first three stanzas, okay? What I'd like to do is I'd like you to choose three quotations, and they can be more than one line if needed, that you think expose the horrific treatment of the chimney sweepers. Where here would you say that the little children who are chimney sweepers have been treated unfairly, in a way that's inhuman, in a way that's unjust, okay? Pause the video now and write them down. Remember your speech marks, yeah? Okay, there were lots of choices, guys, okay? But I've selected three pairs of lines, if you like, that I think are particularly pertinent, okay? You may have chosen these, you may have chosen parts of these, it's all good as long as you have a reason why, okay? My first one is this one, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. There's a sense there that the father even is looking to profit from their child, probably out of desperation more than anything, so it's kind of like a form of slavery in that respect, where the child is sold to this master sweep to be mistreated for his own profit. The other one I've chosen is little Tom Dacre, who cried when his head that curled like a lamb's back was shaved. So the idea that sense of Tom could not choose himself, he had his head shaved really to protect him from lice as well as to stop the soot from getting tangled up in it. But the idea that it really upset Tom, and he had no choice in that kind of act of his identity itself. Third choice I've gone for is thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. I feel like there's a bit of foreshadowing and a bit of a clue here about the likely path of chimney sweeps. There, huge amounts of them were likely, and almost pretty much did, to die as children through some kind of irreversible lung damage or death in a chimney or whatever it may be. Okay, you may have chosen other ones, but well done, as long as you've got a sense of actually how pretty brutal this poem is in showing what it was like to be a chimney sweep. Okay, so exit task for today, please, guys. What I'd like you to do, I'd like you to copy and complete that sentence stem there. Try and use one of these four things here itself to frame your ideas. And all I've put at the bottom there are potential words you might want to use. Okay. All right, guys. So you pause the video here and then finish that sentence off. Well done, guys. Great work there. So I will see you tomorrow. Well done.